Before my husband went abroad, he asked me, heavily pregnant, to take care of his sick father and paralyzed mother for him, and I did as he asked. From then on, prenatal checkups were done alone, childbirth was faced alone, and dealing with the child's illnesses and the elderly's passing fell solely on me. 20 years later, a group of journalists appeared before me. Mrs. Jew, hello, what are your thoughts on Mr. Jew leaving all his inheritance to you and your son? Only then did I learn that after going abroad, he had suffered a brief memory loss and later became a billionaire CEO. As for the in-laws who had driven me out, they were now living in the best nursing home. He is a filial son, living a glorious life. Yet he has let down only me and our child. Where was he when our child was beaten and left with a crippled leg? Where was he when I had to beg everywhere because I couldn't afford our child's tuition? When the child and I were changing light bulbs at our doorstep to earn money, a group of reporters suddenly barged into our home. They held cameras in their hands, and the flashes grew increasingly intense, almost blinding us. I was stunned for a moment. What was this about? In these times, even a small-time worker like me, a commoner making a living by replacing light bulb filaments, could attract an interview. A gilded business card was suddenly handed to me by a well-dressed middle-aged man. Mrs. Jew, hello, I am Mr. Jew's lawyer. This is my card. The car to take you and your son home is already waiting outside. Before I could react, a barrage of questions was thrown at me, with the first reporter leading the charge. Mrs. Jew, hello, how do you feel about Mr. Jew leaving all his inheritance to you and your son? Are you overjoyed? But who is this Mr. Jew? Do I even know him? Why would he leave his inheritance to us? My mind is filled with question marks. I'm lost. And so is my son. He was once a victim of school bullying, had his leg crippled by beatings, and later became extremely introverted. You must have the wrong person. My mom isn't any Mrs. Jew, and my father has been missing for almost 20 years. The middle-aged man awkwardly took out a letter and showed it to me. This is your husband's handwriting, isn't it? Due to certain circumstances, he later changed his name to Levi Jew. You are indeed the person I'm looking for. Then he handed me another yellowed black and white photograph, and the man in the picture was unmistakably my beloved Levi. He, looking exactly as he did before he went abroad, with mixed emotions. My child and I followed the young man's gesture and boarded the luxurious car waiting for us outside the door. 5 hours later, the luxury car entered an upscale villa community. After navigating several winding roads, it finally stopped in front of an extravagant villa. By then, my son and I were already somewhat exhausted from the long journey. As I supported my son and walked into the villa's living room, my eyes were met with an overwhelming sea of white. The man I hadn't seen in years had long since turned into a giant black and white photograph. In the picture, he looked neat. Dressed in a meticulously buttoned-up Zhongshan suit, clean-shaven, with the corners of his mouth slightly upturned, as if greeting me, on the table before the memorial portrait. Aside from flowers and candles, there was also a bowl of oranges and a plate of sunflower seeds, all things I used to love eating. He's dead. He actually died just like that, without a word. I still had a heart full of resentment and grievances I hadn't vented at him. How dare he die like this? He hasn't even seen his son yet, nor has he held him, not even once. His death turned our decade-long resentment into a farce. All the mourners who came were wealthy people of local fame and status. They are his friends or work colleagues. When they saw my son, they were all astonished, saying he looked exactly like his father, as if they were two faces carved from the same mold. They said, "It seems you've been doing all right these years. The child has grown so tall and matured. With this money, any grudges should vanish like smoke. You can live well from now on." But they overlooked my son's limping leg and ignored the hardships and suffering we've endured all these years. Choking back tears, I waved my hand to signal them to stop talking. I don't need their generosity at others' expense. That money might be a lot, but it can't spare me 20 years of hardship, nor can it make up for the pain of my son growing up without a father. During all those years he was abroad, every day I seemed to be longing to see him again, hoping he had some unspoken difficulties that kept him from returning to us. Occasionally, I would even wonder if he had met with some accident abroad. leaving him no chance to come back to us. But later, I clearly heard that his parents, who had refused to leave after we were driven out, were specially taken care of by people he sent. I admit he's now a wealthy and powerful boss, he's impressive, he's filial to his parents, and he's also very generous with us, yet I can't feel the slightest bit of happiness. Perhaps he's been fair to everyone, but not to me and our child, seeing our grief. His lawyer took the initiative to apologize on his behalf. I know President Jew did many things wrong, but I hope you can forgive him, considering he's already passed away. This was also his final wish. He also said that before Levi he died, he had wanted to see me, but he was terminally ill, coughing up blood almost every day. He was afraid of frightening us, which is why he didn't bring us back before his death. Of course, there was another reason. He knew he couldn't face us. He lacked the courage to meet our eyes, filled with grievance and hatred. In the suicide note the lawyer handed me, he wrote, "I owe you an apology. I didn't know that after I left, my parents would treat you so harshly, blaming your presence for my reluctance to return home. I owe you this apology." But could this apology ever make up for the harm I suffered? He must have investigated it later, right? After his father developed Alzheimer's, he would throw feces at me, even in his confusion. He still hated me, believing I was the reason Levi he didn't want to return and reunite with them. No matter how I explained or how filial I was, it was useless. His mother was bedridden, and I took care of her every need, even selling the heirloom jade bracelet my mother gave me before marriage to pay for her medical treatment. Yet, influenced by others, she wrote a will early on, leaving the house to her nephew instead of me or our son. We were mocked by those around us. When people laughed at me for having no husband and at my son for having no father, he was nowhere to be found. So now, there's no need anymore. I raised my head sadly, holding back the tears from falling. I won't accept his apology. Seeing how stubborn I was, the lawyer and many others around came to persuade me. The lawyer said that he had achieved fame and success by then. If he had wanted to find another partner while he was alive, he could have easily found someone, not just like me, but even a 20-year-old college student, yet he never sought another. He refused to see us. Partly because of his poor health and the fact that he had lost his fertility early on, he was afraid I would look down on him for being inadequate. The lawyer also said that when he came looking for us 10 years ago, my child and I had already been driven out by my in-laws. At that time, personal identification information wasn't yet interconnected online, so despite trying many methods, he couldn't find us. Moreover, there was a reason he hadn't returned to the country for so long back then. He had gone abroad for business and encountered a bombing incident. He suffered from temporary amnesia for a few years and didn't intentionally abandon or neglect us. But no matter the reasons, he ultimately missed the most important 20 years of my life. As an entrepreneur, he was successful, but as a father and a lover, he failed. Faced with such a large inheritance, my son was not swayed by it and instead refused it. He said, "If I choose to forgive you, it would mean disregarding all the suffering my mother endured over the years. If he had divorced her properly, my mother could have remarried with me or escaped the shackles he imposed, living her life freely. Where was he when my mother was being beaten with a cane by my grandfather? Where was he when my grandmother had her nephew drive us out of our home? Does he know we've slept on the streets, or that we've rummaged through trash bins for food? Does he know why I was beaten until I became lame? Others mocked me as a fatherless bastard, bullied me with no one to avenge me. I hate him." After saying this, my son tore off the mourning clothes someone had forced onto him and limped out of the living room, choosing to wait for me in the yard. He never had a father before, and he doesn't need one now. I didn't want to stay either, not as Levi his widow, letting others scrutinize my wretchedness. But the people in this building wouldn't let me and my son leave, saying, "Is it so hard to just put on a show for these few days of mourning?" We had no choice but to stay. On the day of the funeral, at the memorial hall, it was that same lawyer again who brought his urn before me. "Say something to him, he's about to be buried." I thought for a long time, but my mind was blank except for one word, deserved. But this phrase doesn't fit. The dead should be respected above all, yet I didn't want to say something insincere. So I told him, "In the next life, let's not meet again." You take your sunny road, and I'll cross my single-plank bridge, when the lawyer tried to hand me the urn. I refused, but when I saw his urn being lowered into that small, square pit with my own eyes, yet I still feel a bit sad for the 20 years I wasted in vain, sad for my lost love Levi he. I'm so heartbroken. I think my Levi he died long ago. What now lies in the urn is the renowned Mr. Jew. Not my Levi he. My Levi he would never have the heart to treat me this way. Unable to hold back any longer, I collapsed to the ground, weeping bitterly. As I cried, my vision blurred, and I plunged face first into the dirt pit before me. Mom, what's wrong? Don't scare me like this. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, I seemed to hear my son calling out to me, and then everything went black. I was jolted awake by the loudspeaker from the cotton mill. When I opened my eyes, the first things I saw were the checkered curtains my mother had bought and the thermos on the table. I felt a bit dazed. This scene was so familiar, so comforting. Why are you still in bed? Come and eat. I made you fried eggs and prepared milk. When my mother's gentle voice came from the direction of the living room, I found myself in tears without realizing it. My parents were factory workers, and by the late 1980s, our family was considered relatively well off. If I had listened to them back then and married someone of equal social standing, instead of ignoring their advice and choosing the so-called golden boy Levi he, stepping into the quagmire of his family, I could have lived a comfortable life. My parents wouldn't have cut ties with me, refusing to see me for the rest of their lives. In my previous life, they were so angry at my disobedience that they didn't even tell me which hospital my mother was in when she fell ill, and when they passed away, they forbade me from attending their memorials. Yet it was these very same heartless parents who, when I was at my most desperate, had a relative pass me 1,000 yuan. Telling me not to die on the side of the road. They did care about me, but the rift between us was an undeniable fact, beyond repair. And now, I haven't completely fallen out with my family because of Levi he. There's still a chance to mend things. I finished washing up with a smile and sat at the table to have breakfast with my parents. As they ate, they heard Levi he again. My mother cautiously spoke up. That partner of yours, if you can break up, you should. The only college student in the district is bound for great things in the future. A high position is no match for you. These were the same words they had said to me in my past life, but back then, I believed love could conquer all, that true love meant defying the whole world for him. So in that previous life, on this very morning, I had a huge argument with my family and left in anger. Indeed, good advice is often hard to swallow. Everything they said later came true, one by one. I stirred the milk in my bowl, then nodded earnestly. Mom, I'll listen to you. I'll bring up breaking up with him later. I've thought it through. He's capable and ambitious, but he's not the right one for me. My parents exchanged glances, both looking quite pleased. My dad even pulled out 800 yuan from an old magazine in the cabinet and handed it to me. He's given you quite a few things before. Return what you can, and use this to compensate for what you can't. We can't just take his things for free and let others laugh at us. I was stunned. Dad, isn't this the money you said you'd use to buy a fridge and a color TV? My dad waved his hand. It's fine. We can buy a fridge and TV later. My daughter's happiness is what matters most, right now. All I can think is how utterly despicable my past self was. Arya, what brings you here? When Levi he saw me at his university gate, he seemed momentarily stunned. He probably never expected me to suddenly take a bus to the provincial capital to find him. I came to tell you something. As I spoke, quite a few people around us were staring in our direction. They, like Levi he, were dressed in fashionable clothes, their faces brimming with youth and enthusiasm, holding books that were obscure and difficult for me to understand, unlike me, who looked like an ordinary worker, completely out of place among them. But Levi he didn't seem to notice at all. He didn't avoid me or look down on me for coming from a small town and dressing plainly. Instead, he warmly pulled me aside and said, Arya, it's so great that you're here. Let's take advantage of the weekend, and I'll show you around the area. A smile lingered at the corners of his lips, and his eyes reflected my image. That Levi he, who once had me in his heart and eyes, seemed to return to my side in that very moment. He is Levi, he in flesh and blood, no longer that struggling patient on the verge of death. He poured out to me like spilling beans, telling me about all the fun things here and what had happened recently, in the pavilion near the school. He held my hand and talked endlessly. I didn't interrupt him. I feel like this is a dream, a beautiful dream I've longed for years. I'm not afraid of its brevity, only wishing this moment could last a little longer. Letting me see my beloved one more time. But the moon waxes and wanes, and people experience joys and sorrows, partings and reunions. This moment was bound to come. After he had talked himself hoarse, I took out all the things he had given me from my backpack and placed them on the small table. These are the things you gave me before. The scarf is old, the 2 magazines got lost, the candy was eaten, and this part I've converted to cash for you, about 300 yuan, here's 500. Let's break up. Don't see each other anymore. He froze. It took him a long time before he finally opened his mouth. Why, have you found someone else? I shook my head. He asked again, is it your family who thinks I'm not good enough for you? Or is it because you think I don't earn enough? I shook my head again. It's my family who thinks you're too outstanding. The fee you earn from translating a book is more than what my mom makes in a year, but precisely because of that, I can't keep up with you, and yet I'm unwilling to spend my whole life as just an appendage to you. If we get married, people won't see me as Arya Cai anymore. They'll only notice that I'm your wife. Levi, whatever I do, they'll only care about whether my actions might embarrass you. Your parents would think I'm marrying above my station, treating me with disdain. They're in poor health and need care, but they'd still look down on me. You can't possibly stay with this family and me forever after marriage. You're ambitious. I've heard you say more than once that you want to go abroad to do business. Then what about me? Stay with your paralyzed mother and your sick father, have a child and grow old alone. You can't be too greedy. You can't have it both ways. Since you've decided to pursue your career, then focus on that. Don't waste my youth. I can't afford it. I poured out all the bitterness I couldn't express in my past life, venting it all out like spilling beans. Levi, his eyes reddened again and again as he held me tightly in his arms. I'm sorry, I didn't know you had to endure so much. I'll talk to my family about it. You're absolutely not reaching above your station. It's me who has always liked you and wanted to be with you. So please, don't break up with me, okay? His chest rose and fell rapidly, and I could clearly sense how terrified he was of losing me, but I was no longer afraid. I had already lost him once before. This time, I don't want love anymore. All I want is a happy and harmonious family. I want to live in peace with my parents. I want my child to be born into a family with a father. And I want my career to reach new heights, not to be dragged into hell by his family of origin. He might truly be remarkable, an outstanding boss. If I were a bystander, I'd applaud him and take pride in him. As a lover, he truly isn't suited to be a husband. No husband would abandon his lover and child for a full 20 years, completely indifferent and uninvolved. But you would still go abroad to do business, to war-torn countries, right? You were born to make big money. You're ambitious and capable. You care about your career. But does that mean mine isn't important? I wasn't swayed by his sweet talk. Why is it that just because I'm not as outstanding as him, when someone must sacrifice for the family, it's automatically assumed to be me? I also want a thriving career. I have a real knack for sales. If it weren't for marrying him, I was originally going to work at a coastal trading company through a friend's introduction. Influenced by him and to keep up with his pace, I had taught myself English, which would have made me highly sought after in a foreign trade company. You can pursue your career, and after marriage, I can hire a nanny for my parents. He refused to let go, even making empty promises. What if I suddenly can't reach you? Don't have money to hire a nanny, or if I suddenly get pregnant, what should I do then? Have you thought about that? Only now do I realize how selfish he is at his core. He says he loves me deeply, but in truth, he loves himself the most, his own future. He opened his mouth but said nothing, tears falling first. He knew he couldn't persuade me to continue our relationship today. After a long silence, he finally said, I'm sorry. I used to think things were too simple. Let's take some time to cool off for now. I don't agree to break up, but I won't come looking for you either. As for that money, "You take it, I don't need it." After saying this, he carefully packed up the items I had returned, one by one, and staggered away. Watching his devastated expression, I couldn't help but feel the same way inside. I know it might be hard to convince him to break up right away. So I'll wait. Time will heal everything. After returning home, he indeed never showed up again. I started working from 9 to 5, and everything gradually fell into place. I'm slowly adjusting to life without him. However, an unexpected slap shattered the peace that day. Slap, a crisp sound rang out, and 5 finger marks appeared on my face as I was selling goods. I looked up to see it was Levi, his father, Hidajuan, who dressed respectably thanks to the money his son sent every month, behaved in a vulgar manner. "I'll beat you to death, you wretched woman, because you dumped my son." He was upset and got into a car accident, fracturing his bones. He's still lying in the hospital now. "You must compensate our family for the losses." It was the peak sales period, and the supply and marketing cooperative was crowded with customers, most of whom were employees from our factory and familiar with me. Upon seeing the commotion, some customers stepped in to mediate, while others gathered around to watch the spectacle. My anger flared up instantly. I have nothing to do with him in this lifetime, so there's no need to yield to him at every turn. I lashed out directly. "Your son and I broke up peacefully." "What do you mean by dumping?" "If he got sick from anger after the breakup, that's his own pettiness. What does it have to do with me?" "When we split, I returned everything that needed to be returned. I owe your family nothing, so stop throwing your weight around here. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police." Hidajuan probably never expected me to talk to him like this. His eyes bulged with rage as he started spewing filth. "I'm your elder. How dare you speak to me like this? You dated my son. Everyone knows it. If you don't marry him, you'll be nothing but damaged goods. Let's see who'd want you after this." So this was his game. He thought smearing my reputation would leave me with no options but to obediently marry his son. But in my previous life, I lived to the age of 40 and had seen a world where divorce was no longer scorned. My perspective was broad, and I refused to be confined by such narrow-mindedness. "What kind of elder are you? Just because we dated doesn't mean we slept together. How does that make me damaged goods?" "Rest assured, even if I remain unmarried for the rest of my life and become an old maid, I'd never marry your son." With that, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop me, I picked up a broom and chased Hidajuan out. This incident made me infamous overnight, turning me into the factory's notorious shrew. My mother was so worried her hair nearly turned white. "Now your reputation has been ruined by their family. Even Aunt Jong, who promised to introduce you to a potential match last time, has backed out, saying she won't arrange any more meetings for you." My father sighed and said, "If it really doesn't work out, you don't have to get married. Stay single for life, and we'll take care of you. Don't take the gossip in the factory seriously. Don't let it get to you, and whatever you do, don't lose hope." But I didn't think it was that bad. I had long wanted to go out and see the world. After this incident, I suddenly made up my mind. I patted their hands reassuringly and said, "I've decided to quit. Instead of being pointed at in the factory, I'd rather go to the coastal areas and try my luck. I'm good at sales, and with my English skills, I'm sure I can find a better job and start over. Why is it that only Levi he can make big money?" I refused to believe it. Having been reborn, I know too many future paths to wealth. I'm going to make big money too, and I'll show him what it means to balance family and career. That building a career doesn't have to come at the expense of family, and with determination, both can be achieved. After a night of consideration, my parents agreed with my plan. I wasted no time and submitted my resignation that very morning. Giving up the coveted position of salesperson at the supply and marketing cooperative, everyone said I was foolish. Abandoning an iron rice bowl to dive into business. Utter madness. Some even suggested I should take the opportunity to gracefully step back and marry Levi to silence the gossip. After all, he was the only college graduate in the entire district, and with rumors of him soon pursuing graduate studies, he became an even more precious catch, a top-tier match by any standard. But I paid no heed to any of it. I only stood firm in what I believed was right. Levi, he was finally discharged from the hospital and rushed back from the provincial capital in a hurry, only to bump into me standing in the train station waiting hall, carrying large and small bags. He was eager to apologize and explain to me, but despite having prepared a whole speech, he was startled when he saw me like this. "Where are you going? Are you giving up your job?" I nodded awkwardly. "To the coast. I'm going to pursue my own career too." "Levi," he panicked completely. "Will we still see each other in the future? How can I find you? Will you ever come back?" I shook my head, feeling even more lost than he was. I hadn't even figured out exactly where I would settle down yet. I only had a vague direction for my future plans, but I had to make him give up. "Probably not. I'll likely settle down there, get married, and start a family. You know, your father completely ruined my reputation here. If I stay, I'll just keep being laughed at. I've truly let go now. So you should too, move forward and never look back." But Levi, he refused. He knelt down right in front of me at the train station, in full view of the crowd of onlookers. A man as proud as him actually knelt before me, casting aside the self-respect he had always cherished, choking back tears. He clung to my legs. "I'm begging you, don't go. I don't want to lose you. I'll apologize on behalf of my father. I believe at this moment, his love for me couldn't be fake, at least right now. He truly loved me deeply and couldn't bear to let me go. Such a man was worth my 20 years of waiting. But the man he later became wasn't worthy, so I won't trade my entire life for just this fleeting moment of emotion. He might be kneeling this second, but if I soften my heart now, I'll be kneeling for the past 20 years. His suffocating family background, the hardship of raising a child alone. I'm not just choosing a husband for myself, but also a father for my son, at this moment. I'm more certain than ever about my decision." I quickly reached out to help him up. "Don't do this. People are watching. A man's knees are worth gold. He should only kneel to heaven, earth, and his parents. I can't bear you kneeling to me." He refused to get up. "If you don't agree to stay, I won't get up." He truly couldn't understand how I, who had been envisioning a future with him just half a month ago, could now be so resolute in completely abandoning him over some conflicts. I immediately knelt down, kowtowing to him several times with loud thuds, even bruising my forehead. "Is this enough? I beg you, don't appear before me again. You can't give me what I want. I only have this one life, and I want to live it for myself. Please, let me go." "Okay, then." As he stood there utterly shocked, I decisively dragged my luggage and ran toward the ticket gate. He shouted after me, "Wait for me. 10 years, just 10 years. Okay." I didn't respond. This time, I was finally going to run toward my own life. Later, I learned from mutual high school classmates that after returning, he had a big fight with his parents and resolutely went abroad to start a business. In this life, since he didn't need to marry me, he had no reservations. So he went abroad earlier to make his way, thus avoiding the bombing incident that had caused his brief memory loss in his previous life. As for his parents, he had a friend arrange for professionals to take care of them, allowing them to move into a nursing home early and live a comfortable life. But from that day on, they never saw their son again, only occasionally receiving brief letters from him, a few sparse lines urging them to stay well and not to worry, because they caused me trouble, forcing me to flee far from home. An eternal rift formed between me and my son. The days of fatherly kindness and filial piety could never return. We met again 10 years later at a high school reunion. This time, without amnesia or any attachments, he achieved success much earlier than in his previous life. It took him 10 years to accomplish what had taken him 20 years in his last lifetime. Then, with great honor, he moved his business back to the country and is now the CEO of a home appliance company. At this point, he is in his early 30s, free from illness, impeccably dressed, and chatting and laughing with friends at the gathering, until I showed up at the class reunion holding my 5-year-old son's hand, and his expression froze for a moment. When my classmates saw the change in me, they all widened their eyes in surprise. After all, no matter how hard I tried before, the biggest halo around me in others' eyes was nothing more than being Levi, his girlfriend. Now, dressed in glamorous outfits, adorned with designer brands, carrying the latest French luxury handbag, and holding the hand of my son, who was dressed impeccably like a little gentleman. It was clear at a glance that he was well-bred. Everyone had heard about how I was slapped by Hidajuan back then, and they all said I left in disgrace. No one had much faith in my current situation. After all, without Levi, where could I possibly find another husband with such promising prospects? A female classmate exaggeratedly opened her mouth wide. Where have you been? Did you land a wealthy husband? I shook my head and laughed. Why must a woman's achievements always be attributed to a man? I handed each of them my business card. Let me introduce myself. I'm now the owner of a foreign trade company. I earned all of this myself. My husband is actually my competitor. I'll introduce you to him when I have the time. I am no longer that down-and-out mother hiding in street corners selling goods at a stall, and my son is no longer the lame child without a father from my past life. Nor does he have to endure a childhood full of absence anymore. My business card reads Chairman of Aria Foreign Trade Co., Limited. I've achieved my dream. My company pays over 5 million in taxes annually, proving that I too can succeed. Amidst everyone's astonishment, they gathered around me and Levi, each offering their praises. This time, I was no longer just a supporting character in his life. I had earned the recognition of others, as the gathering was nearing its end. I was leading my son out of the restroom when Levi stopped us. He lowered his head and asked me in a hoarse voice, "Can we talk in private? I won't do anything to you." I nodded and gestured for him to move to the balcony at the side of the hallway. However, after briefly entrusting my son to a female classmate I used to be very close with, I followed him to the balcony. The hallway was on the 3rd floor, and from this balcony, one could see far into the distance. The distant mountains were like dark eyebrows, while nearby stood tall buildings and birds soaring freely across the sky. Everything is thriving and full of vitality. I think we should all look forward. Levi, his hand, holding the pocket watch I once returned, trembled. I thought you would wait for me. This time, I tried so hard. I achieved in 10 years what would normally take 20. I thought we had a chance to be together, but I was still a step too late. I nodded. First acknowledging his efforts with relief. I heard about it. You're amazing. Then I said, but if I had stayed where you wanted me to, waiting for you, and now you're a big boss while I'm laid off and selling goods at a street stall, we wouldn't have had a good ending either. Your family would still oppose us being together, thinking I'm not good enough for you. At first, we might be sweet, but then we'd start arguing, having disagreements. The unequal social status would keep our conflicts alive, eventually leading us to divorce. Levi shook his head. I'm not saying you shouldn't pursue your dreams. Waiting for me and starting a foreign trade company with me aren't mutually exclusive. We've been given a second chance. And this outcome feels so regrettable to me. But he seemed to forget. I'm not left with only the option of waiting for him. I did love him. But first and foremost, I am myself. I have the right to make any choice. I can choose to wait, and naturally, I can also choose not to. The lessons from my past life have led me to choose not to wait. Rather than waiting for someone else to give me hope, begging for scraps, I prefer to be the one who creates hope for myself. I told him, my husband is different from you. He doesn't need me to wait for him. He has always grown and strived alongside me. We walk the same path, inspiring each other to become better versions of ourselves. He has never asked me to sacrifice anything. I am very fortunate to have met a wonderful husband who understands my longing for dreams. He wants me to succeed even more than I do and is proud of me. Nor do I need to look up to him, because he will always stand side by side with me. These are things that Levi may never understand. He is a shining, favored child of heaven, always putting himself at the center. Before leaving, Levi asked me in despair, in this lifetime, "Do you still resent me?" I shook my head and calmly told him, I don't blame anyone anymore. People must look forward and not keep themselves trapped in the past. I've moved on, and you should try to move on too. As I left, I faintly heard his muffled sobs, but I didn't look back. I went to the private room, took my son's hand, and walked downstairs with him. My husband was there to pick us up, waiting downstairs, even though he's as busy as I am, yet whenever possible, he makes time for us to be together, because love is enduring companionship. After that day, we never saw each other again. He was busy expanding his empire. making it bigger and stronger. I was busy raising children, making money, and traveling the world with my husband. However, perhaps because of that unresolved hurdle, even after being reborn and possessing a young body again, he never remarried in his lifetime, rarely saw his parents, and drew a circle around himself as a prison, forever confining himself to that past relationship, taking endless pleasure in it. Later, I heard from an old classmate that before his death, he held that pocket watch in his hand. Inside its cover was a photo of me from my youth.